Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Colt Levy, voice of Rody Soul in My Hero Academia and a bunch of other crazy characters, and you are watching Points of Experience.
What is your number one like horror story from a recording? Do you ever have what's like the worst thing that happened to you in something you were working on?
I mean, I've been pretty lucky, I think, for the most part. I think actually my horror story with recording, like the worst one, has nothing to do with voiceover. It was when I was still in a band,
Huh?
and it was like we were relatively new to like making our own recordings and working on like seeing our ideas fully through, but we were like really in the thick of like we're gonna home produce all of our stuff. And I remember we spent like a whole day setting up all this elaborate stuff. We had bought all this new gear and all this stuff, and we had been rehearsing these songs to record them live a certain way for like probably 2 or 3 months. And we hit record and get all things set up, and we played and we did like each song a few times. So we probably spent like, a solid like 2 or 3 hours just playing, assuming we were recording everything. And then we got to the end of it and realized that nothing actually got tracked, and it was just devastating. And
And
we learned a very hard lesson that day, but it was brutal.
at least it wasn't like on your own dime of like you were investing in a big studio to do something
No,
and you
yeah,
know.
that would be miserable. But I mean, like, at least in those scenarios, we know that like there's someone there who's technically proficient to cover that. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like we're manning the board in that scenario.
Sure. And then it's not your fault either, so you don't feel as bad.
Right, exactly. Then you're just kind of hanging out. Though in that scenario you're still sweating your money, which is a bummer.
Yes,
Um,
yeah. I've had a
yeah.
similar thing like that. I got asked to do, it was like, I don't know, I don't really know. I don't remember if it was actually I was getting booked to do this or if it was like a scratch recording for something. It was a new Disney movie, and I was recording from home when I lived in New York, and I was working with people over at Disney, and we went through the whole thing, and they're like, all right, just send me your file. I was like, okay, great. And then I go to listen back to it on my computer, and it's all like, and
And they're like, we didn't want Donald.
yeah. I was so afraid though, because it was my first like big time working with them, and I was like, my agent's like, why haven't you sent it? What's going on? And I had like my tail between my legs, and I'm like, listen, I have to come clean. I don't know what happened. It's just not there. I can try and do it on my own and like just send it again, like try and remember the direction they gave me, or do we just
Oh my
tell them
God.
like it's not working? They're like, no, we can't lie. Just tell them. And thankfully, they were super cool about it, or presumptuously the way they
Right,
they
right,
made
right.
it
They
seem
made it
it.
seem like they were cool, yeah.
But I didn't work on that. At least I wasn't involved to what I had thought I was going to be. So I think it might have annoyed somebody.
It might have had a slight, yeah. Well,
Eh.
it's that hard thing where it's like, I think no matter what, especially if people don't know you personally at that stage, like
Yeah.
so much of it is on someone else's dime and someone else's time, and it's not even necessarily as much personal as it is like we just need to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times, like, because we've all made those, had those slip ups. It's like, and you feel like you've made this colossal error.
Yeah.
That is like completely like, you're like, well, my career's ruined. They're going to write emails to other people and be like, this guy doesn't know how to do recording, like, and none of that actually happens, because the reality is like every other part of what you did was very likely great and collaborative and awesome. And,
Yeah.
like, it just comes down to like everybody makes snafus, and like there are some legendary mess up stories. One of my favorites are there's this amazing book that Michael Caine wrote about acting, and he recalls a lot of his early years. And we think of Michael Caine as like absolute royalty to the arts, and he talks about some colossal mess ups that like by any means you would think would be like, well, that's a career ender, like that are
Yeah.
just like blunders that are, I mean, like there was one he talked about where he was like some main character in a big war picture, and he had to do like a charging over a mountain kind of thing with like 100 plus extras, and they do this whole thing and they shoot the thing, and it's like they really can't afford to do many takes of this one moment, and there's like the light, the daylight and all this stuff. And the costumer comes up to him afterwards and was like, some of those buttons were buttoned in the shop before and now they were and it was like stuff like that, like little, like, you know. Or he would talk about like scenes where he would have one line. He'd be like, it was like I was new to say, like I'd have one line, I just had one thing to remember, and he's like, and I just couldn't say it, or I'd say
Yeah.
it totally wrong, or like in like 15 takes later, and you're just like, yeah, you know.
Do
That's
you
called
have
being human.
Yeah, well, gosh, I mean, we all have, we all make mistakes. We all are going to have those opportunities where something's not going to go perfect. I think we're very naive to think every single time you walk into any professional setting, but also humans interaction, because I say this to Allie all the time. I may not be, she tells me all the time, she's like, you don't seem like that type of person, but anytime I'm having a human interaction with someone, particularly if I don't know them, I am like, and I'm actually so grateful to masks right now because it happens a lot at like conventions and meeting people. Like I'm like behind the mask, I'm kind of like, I sound like I'm really doing a great natural performance. I'm like, hey, how are you? How's it going? But inside or in my face,
You're
I'm
like, please let this be going well.
yeah, don't say something stupid. Just be kind and be normal. You know, I think we all have those situations in life, and you just got to learn to adapt with them and become comfortable with yourself. And that's what it is for me more than anything, is being okay with being awkward or weird or not normal, or, you know, not having an answer that's perfect all the time. I think the more you hide that, the more you purposely walk into those scenarios where someone perceives it as being weird.
That's 100% it. I know for me, I made peace with myself a very long time ago that like I'm just a weirdo, and that there's only so many people are gonna, you know, dig my vibe or whatever it is, or my energy or my, you know, personality. And I remember like giving myself the okay to just be like, you're not supposed to be everybody's friend. You're not supposed to please everybody. Like I want all people to be happy. I want to be respectful to people, but I definitely like, because I've spent years of being that guy where I'd go into a room and I'd be like, I just don't want to like make a total ass out of myself, because I know that I just always felt like inferior or uncool, or just I didn't know what to do with my hands, or, you know, like, and meanwhile, everybody kind of feels that way. And it's, you know, so much of it, I think, is just trying to remember that we're all just these silly, weird, constantly feeling all kinds of things up and down and in between beings that like, I mean, you never know what a single person is experiencing in a single day if you don't know them personally, what they may be going through family-wise, with their job, with their whatever. If they're just even feeling 100% in their body, they may present themselves one way, and they may be incredibly, you know, sick or this or that, or may have an injury or whatever, you know. And it's like so much of I think what we do when we meet out in public is, if we can find a way to be more compassionate to each other, just like off the bat, and compassionate to ourselves in not needing to think we have to show up as this like perfect image, you know, the idea of like the ideal first meeting of a person and like good first impression, like some of the closest people in my life that I think are some of the most wonderful people don't always necessarily give the best first impression because they're either like a little obtuse or this or that, or just how they carry themselves is not necessarily like what we've been considered to say like the norm. But like you spend 5 minutes with them and you're like, oh my God, this person's amazing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of these things that I think we've like set in stone that shouldn't be, that just make us nervous to be ourselves, and it's so strange.
Yeah, it is. We are all floating on this rock in space, and we're all made of the same stuff, and yet we put such pressures on ourselves to have like immaculate presentations and interactions with people. And this is what we're talking about now, is actually one of the reasons I was excited to have you on. I really wanted to have you on because I think, and this is where we're going to get into some compliments. We're going to start this off quick, and we'll get it out of the way. We'll get it out of the way, whether you want to hear it or not. But funny enough, I was going through, because I knew it was around here sometime at some point, because this is when Neo came out. It's almost a year to the date almost that we have known each other or interacted with each other at the very least, which I thought was so crazy and fun, and a little tidbit of our
I was
history.
trying to think about that because I was like, it feels like it's at least been a year or something around that. I mean, honestly, it feels like it's been longer. I feel like I've known you for my whole life already.
I know. Isn't that weird? And I wonder how much that has to do with just our interactions when we have them, or because we're kind of cut from a similar cloth, or we have similar tendencies and ways of perceiving life and the things that we value. I think
it's all of it. I think it's all of it. Yeah. Like, I'm still kind of like, how do we not know people, back at home, back in New York? Like, how do we not know the same people? I'm still waiting for someone to be like the tether where it's like, oh, of course. Okay. We just never crossed paths while we were there, 'Cause
Maybe
you
it'll
feel
happen
like
today.
someone that like, it's so weird. I feel like I've known you since I was, a teenager, and we've like been on this crazy adventure this whole time. So you've been truly like such a gift of a friend, man, in so many ways. And it's like, I'm so glad that you're out here too, because you're such a freaking rock star, and it's so much fun seeing you kick ass. Can we say ass, by the way?
Yeah, we could say ass. We can. I try to have this be as organic and pure of a. I don't want to stifle any sort of emotion in that way, but and right back at you in a mirror. And this is where I'm going to get into this little bit of a. I'm gonna get on stage here and hand him the award, so to speak. This is the opening ceremony, because and just for people to know and get the understanding, I moved out here the start of 2020 at some point, and I spent about a year, stumbling my way into this industry, and kind of in a similar. I mean, I know you've been out here and you've been doing this for a while, but we were saying this kind of off camera and off stream. If you look at Ryan's IMDb, I was looking through it and I was counting the titles because so many of them said 2021, and he was telling us how there's actually probably double that. There was like 23 or 25 titles in 2021 alone that he had come out, and it was like you had an explosion, and it was so rightfully so. And it was kind of the same time for me. I mean, Neo came out, and that was kind of the first thing, and then I had a slow trickle of things, and still things coming out now. But for you to see you kind of blow up in this way, and then to be the type of person you are, and this is the point I want to drive home. So a lot of people in this industry, and I've probably said this to you before, there's a lot of people in this industry, and to the outsider, especially a lot of people who listen to this, if you're trying to break into this, it can seem really daunting, and maybe for some perceived as like a bit of a gatekeep type of scenario. And when I looked at someone like Ryan and the success he was having and the talent that he has, and to realize how much of a forward communicator you are, and how you are, and many other people would attest to this, a type of person who you make it a point to reach out to people and connect people and to create community. And I felt that the weight that you lifted off of my shoulders of feeling kind of like, all right, I'm kind of doing this. I'm like, am I in the cool kids club yet? Kind of feeling, like that insecurity, like to have you reach out to me and then to see the type of interactions you have with other people, it is so fantastic. And everyone will say it. You are the type of person who creates community, and you create it in a very positive way. There's no sense of ego involved. You are a uniter. You preach all the things that I like: positivity, encouragement, kind of reaching the hand down. And it's just been so beautiful to get to know you and to be and to call you a friend. And I truly mean that. You've been like a brother figure to me in this industry and life. I know you're someone I can reach out to. And the funnier part about this is there's so many people like me who feel this way about you. So
no, that's crazy.
It's not. It's really not. And listen, it's hard for me to take compliments too, but this is honest to God. Anybody who knows you, and from the type of messages you put out even into social media, it's not taken for granted by me or by many people. You are such a light to this industry. And as the next generation of people who are coming in and filling these roles, it's a different environment. 20, 30 years ago, it was all kind of faceless voices. And now we all have a face. And to see you be somebody who is a face of positivity and inclusiveness and generosity, that's very important. And it means a lot. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to everybody who follows you and all this stuff. So I rest my case. And
no, that means the world to me, really. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too, dude. I really do. And that's why I would love to explore a lot of these things. And this is kind of the stuff, because obviously you're a rock star in your own regard. You've worked on, and now, between... And I think the first time we spoke on like my Twitch, you hadn't done, or My Hero Academia didn't come out yet. Like with Rody didn't come out yet. I don't think.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So that
was later in the year. Yeah.
to see that, like to watch you take these giant leap after leap after leap, you know, you, while being one of the most talented people in this industry, and I truly mean that, I'm not saying it, we talked about it the other day, I feel like you have the ability to be somebody, especially from a production standpoint, where it's like, oh, I know Ryan can handle any of these, you know, loose ends here. Like, we got it. And also carry the show at the same time. So that's for anybody listening, that type of thing, people call it a utility player. Great. If you could be a utility player and you can kind of have like an everyman or every person voice, wonderful. That's a great thing to have about you, a good set of your skill set. But Ryan not only has that, he has the ability to play character voices and the lead character that's going through every dynamic emotion. That takes a lot, and that's a lot of pressure. Well, do you recognize that about yourself in the moments that you're working?
I definitely do not think in that way about myself. Gosh, you are just I adore you. What I will say, I mean, that's incredibly complimentary. I'm like, whew.
Hey man, that's what we do here. You know, we got to give credit where it's due.
I think what I was always drawn to when I watched movies or watched TV shows or cartoons or whatever it is, or played games, even when, you know, you're inherently drawn to, you know, the Luke Skywalker, this or that or whatever, I was always drawn to the side characters and especially, you know, with on camera stuff, like I was like, well, that's where the actors are like really getting to play, and they're also getting to completely disappear, because a lot of the times you'd be like, well, the people who are just considered only the leading man or woman or whatever, you know, it's suddenly it just becomes this archetype, and you see them just kind of put on different clothes but kind of be the same thing or a different version of the same thing. And I was like, that doesn't interest me in the same way that like completely getting lost in something can be. And while I think there are really incredibly written lead characters and things, it's more few and far between to find the ones that I think feel like they're really going on a unique experience, compared to like, I can play some weird side thing and crack up getting super weird or go to some super dark place, or, you know, there are these little journeys and little stories that I was always so fascinated by, and I always wanted to know more about those characters. So I think I just inherently like to live in those spaces when I get those opportunity. And it's like, you know, when people, you know this, like when you get to work on those kinds of jobs where people bring you in and it's like a fantasy kind of thing or this or that, and suddenly they're like, okay, now you're this kind of creature, and then you're this guy running a shop, and you're like, oh my God, okay, let's create a weird backstory here. Like, you know, how weird can we get with this? How funny can we get with this? How invested can we make the player feel like they're living in this world? Whatever it is, you know, I love it. I love character work.
When you're going through, particularly what you were just saying, when you're presented with those types of jobs where, you know, the production or the director, they know they can trust you, and they're like, I'm going to throw whatever we got at Ryan. Do you have a process, or what is the thing that goes through your brain, or has it become second nature at this point to kind of shift your skin as fast as you need to authentically portray? Is there like a discernible process that you use?
I mean, it depends. You know, I think if there's, you know, if we have the luxury of being able to have a few extra minutes, I love asking questions, you know, up front that just kind of help inform where I might be in a headspace, how, you know, is, you know, because like sometimes you can play like, you know, they're like, okay, this is a shopkeep, and you're like, all right, but is he like curmudgeon-y? Is he like really friendly? Like, what happened to him 20 minutes ago? Like, does he want to sell people stuff, or is he trying to like oversell? You know, it's like there's all these little things I like to know if I can. But I find that like for me, a lot of it is just if a script is really well written, you don't have to even think that hard, because you kind of know what you're like the words almost just tell you how to perform.
Yeah. And
a great director can also guide you into a space, or they'll inform you enough in the beginning and go like, hey, you know, this is the predicament and this is the space that the headspace you have to live in. And for me, it's like I can snap pretty quickly into stuff because I take the words to be the intellectual place that I go to, you know, and I really let the rest of me go back to being like 6 years old in the sandbox, because I know you feel this way too, but I truly believe that, like, especially when you're like on the job and on the clock, one, you have to be efficient. And I think that, like, when you're 6 years old and you're in the playground, you are so vulnerable. You are so truly naked because you're like, suddenly I'm Spider-Man or suddenly I'm this, and you're just in it. You are just so consumed that it doesn't matter who's watching. It doesn't matter. Like, as you get older, you get that like stigma. You start thinking too much about, do I look weird? Do people, like, am I coming off cool when I say this kind of thing? And it's like, no, 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 no. Throw that away. The words will guide you for the intellect, but find the character in your child body and just go to 10. The worst thing you can do is go too far and have to get reined in. But like, I would rather not play it too safe, like, and also in the space if like you have to play in more realism or not. But like, I love kind of just letting the little kid out.
Yeah. I think I remember in college, just thinking back to what you were saying about like children playing. I remember they had us go, trust me, I don't know how to say this, but they phrased it in a very similar way. Don't just be that person. They told us to go to like a park and just watch kids playing. Don't be creepy in doing that, but like if you're, I don't really know the best way to phrase it, but anyway, that was our assignment, was go and watch kids play.
I think what they were saying is essentially like recapture that enthusiasm and that freedom.
Yes.
And that lack of fear. Because so much of it is just being afraid to sound or look dumb. You know?
And kids don't have that. They're uninhibited. They don't have the hopefully at that young age, they're not like having societal pressures or worrying about what this shirt looks like, if they're wearing brand shoes, if their hair is too short or long. I mean,
when I was in
fun.
preschool, I was going to school as different characters. Like I would just show up and like be a different character for the day, sometimes in full, outfits and stuff. Like my mom was both of my parents were amazing with just like letting me and my sister be weird and creative, and like they just knew that space was like important and healthy, and there's a really funny story actually that my mom has recalled many times to me, because I don't remember it because I was that young, but it was essentially like elementary, like pre-elementary kind of thing, and the kind of school where you go and basically just like do arts and crafts and then go home, I guess. And I went in and I must have been like, I was Peter Parker this day, or Luke Skywalker that day, or a Ninja Turtle or a Ghostbuster, or whatever it is. And I would like method act as a kid, for the day. I would just be in that space because it was just fun for me. That just like school, no matter what, was not my ideal space. So I was like, how do I go somewhere else? And the teachers had like reached out to my mom, and they're like, we're kind of concerned with his grip on reality, or just like if he's, if he's really kind of paying attention or what he thinks is going on. And of course, I was so young, my mom is not going to have this conversation with me.
Yeah. So
I go in the next day, and the way that she tells it is that like, the teachers greet all the kids as they walk in at the door. And like, one of the teachers leaned down, she's like, and who are you today? And I looked at her and was like, what are you talking about? I'm Ryan. And I think that kind of has probably always been how I've operated ever since,
Probably some of the best some of the best acting training you could have had, just allowing yourself to have that freedom to do that. Because I think so much of what you learn to do and be as an actor is to get off of yourself and have the freedom to explore and imagine. Like that is acting. And we're some of the best actors we could ever be when we're on the playground playing those characters. Like you said, when 100%. You're going to school, like you're performing, but yet later on we start thinking we have to do all these technical things. And I believe, and a lot of other people would also attest to it, is that really what you're learning is how to remove the things you've created that society has put upon you, to remove those layers to get back to that.
Well, you just said the word that I think is really the key word, which is when you're 6 years old and you tell yourself you're Spider-Man, you believe you're Spider-Man. You don't need anybody to convince you. You need people to try and convince you you're not, and like... And that's the thing to me. And like, obviously there's life, there's all the noise of the world. Like even when you're in a session, there's breaks and people are talking and there's note taking and there's all these, it's not like it's just fluid creativity. But, when the red light is on and you're recording, like in those moments that you're in that line, like if you don't believe it, how's someone else going to believe it? So like you can say words with all kinds of dynamic and stuff, but like convince yourself that that moment is real, however insane it is for that 5, 10 seconds you're reading this line, you know?
Yeah, I remember when I was doing like independent films in New York, and you know you're working with people who are crew members who are just as inexperienced, and they're coming from a world of technicality, so acting to them is completely foreign. And I remember I'd be on
Right.
sets, and I'd be working on things either really emotional or really zany and wacky, and I'm going there, like I'm fully I'm pulling the reins off, and I'm going there, and I'd see these crew members be like this. Like, I think that they were either used to some people being too reserved, or it's just
More
too,
reserved, right.
or too new of an experience to see somebody, like, letting themselves go
Just
off the
go
rails.
for it. Yeah.
And I'd have these moments of, like, I'd have a moment of, like, did I do something wrong at first? Like, having this, like, the...
Right, because you're feeling this awkward tension in the room of like people not knowing what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, in between takes, I'm having, like, I'm building insecurity, and then afterwards they're like, oh my God, that was so good. I'm like... oh gosh, I'm like, everyone was staring at me so weird, it was so uncomfortable, it was so quiet.
Well, and like from their perspective, they're like, we don't want to impede on this moment, so like let him go through this process.
Yeah,
You know?
and then again, that's me having been at a time in my life where I was trying to work through, not worrying about the things around me. So just a very interesting kind of perception of the whole craft. And I think when you're in a position, and I'm sure you've been, and I'm kind of curious if you can pinpoint one of them, to work with really work with other talented actors and have the ability to be in that presence, to be like, oh my gosh, as an actor, to like be watching kind of magic. Do you have any like a scenario where that happened to you?
I mean, I've had a couple of really cool experiences. One, I mean, I remember even just some of my first dubbing jobs, like when I like first got started. I remember like for the first few sessions I had, you know, where like nobody else had really recorded, so it was like I was kind of one of the only actual English voices on the track. So like you were just getting the preview, and it was just whatever the language was at
Sure.
the time. And then I remember they started to bring in some people, and one day I heard one of the scene partners that they recorded like a day before me, and it was Keith Silverstein. And it was the first time I like heard his voice like that and I was like, what? Who is who is that? And it was the scene that I was getting to play off of, and it was the first time I was getting to, in voiceover, getting to play off of someone else, and I was like, this changes everything. This changes how I even just like interpret this moment. And then about a year later, I actually got to do a tandem session with my buddy Kellen, who, I don't know, have you had Kellen on the show yet, Kellen Goff?
Yeah, he was a couple episodes back. Fantastic human being and actor, yeah.
So Kellen's amazing, and he and I worked on a live action dub for a movie where we got to do the whole thing together, because we were like the two co-leads, and we were like best friends in the movie. And they put us in a giant theater room in like a dubbing studio, like a big like those kind of theaters where you like usually like, you know, preview a rough cut of something, you know, like just a couple of chairs, but mostly just space. So he was set up on one side all the way, and I was probably like 10, 12 feet on the other side of the room. We each had a microphone set up. The engineer was like in the back of the room, and we just had this big screen, and we were working off the Rhythmo band, and we were just getting to play off of each other. And it was so incredibly gratifying. And actually now I'm getting to do something too, where it's a tandem dubbing thing. We have one guy in a booth, and I'm in another booth in the same studio, and we're working on this project together. And it's like, there's such a difference in getting to do that stuff, just like doing, you know, a play, I mean, or anything like that, where you just feel so, suddenly you're just wrapped in this moment, instead of trying to craft a piece of the moment with you and the director and the engineer, and knowing that the director will be able to make that thing whole.
Yeah.
But often, you know, we watch finished products and we're like, whoa, it works. So like, oh, that's so cool how that came together, realizing it's so piecemeal.
Yeah.
And getting to experience this where like, we'll do a run and then be like, oh, okay, let's do one more take because we can blah, 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 blah. And like suddenly you just keep raising it. And I mean, I had a similar experience when I had this amazing scene study class that in the before times, as we say, it was this amazing scene study and improv class. And it was a really small group of people. And me and my scene partner at the time had been rehearsing this play, and I'm totally spacing on the title of it now, but it's this incredibly raw play about this guy who's essentially he's about to get married to like this essentially relatively new girl that he's been with for like a year or so, and he decides to go on this, like, before he marries her, go on this crazy road trip, life trip, and he ends up in the play takes place in like 4 different hotel rooms around the country, and he reaches out to like different exes in his life, and it's very, you know, like there's a lot to unpack with it, and like you're like, is this guy, you know, a total asshole? Like it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I got to work through the scene. It was like a 20-page scene with me and my scene partner, and she was so incredible. And it was the first time, like, this was when I was just getting back into acting after the band had broken up and everything, and I was really just getting back into like falling in love with the process. And I remember being so grateful that she was so good and so like game to like go there with me, and we would meet up, you know, outside of class and rehearse a few times a week. And I just remember we would get to this point where we put it up in front of the class, and like all I remember from doing the scene, it was almost like we blacked out. I just remember we looked at each other in the eyes, like we just had, it was like he never broke eye contact, and that was like we just kept it there. I don't remember anything else other than like we finished the scene and the whole class is gasping and crying, and like, and they'd seen us do little pieces of it, but it was like we had found a way to go to such a place. And I think it was because we trusted each other so deeply, and there was a sense of like that eye contact thing, like to me was so resonant. It was like, I've got you, you've got me, like I don't care if a line slips. We're so in this space that like we're going to, like, it's just going to happen naturally no matter what. We're going to get to the end of this thing. And it was so powerful. And yeah, I mean, moments like that, it's why we love doing this, right? Like,
that's why I always try to be, and particularly with the studying of acting, and I think it's important, and it helps you at any point in your career to continuously be thirsting for knowledge and to grow as an actor. Again, some of my favorite experiences acting come from the rehearsal room or the acting class. In a different sense of what you were saying, it reminded me, I had an opportunity where I studied Meisner, so a lot of it was face-to-face repetition. You're staring at people's eyes for a long time, and you're whatever. But this one scene I was doing with a good buddy of mine, and he wasn't. I remember, like, I was like, I can't remember the circumstances that we had. Like, maybe he had done something to me, like he like cheated on my girlfriend. I don't know. It was something like ridiculous where like I was so mad at him.
It was a betrayal thing.
It's a betrayal thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember there's a certain point, you know, we're in the classroom and there's the door and the walls that they have or everything. And my teacher goes, "Get out." She goes, "You can't talk." And she told my my scene partner, and she goes, "Tell him to get out. You're gonna let him treat you like that." So then, he forced me. I'm at this really emotional place, and I'm just kind of berating him. So I'm at like a one note thing too.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of frozen at this point too. So it helped both of us when she goes, "Get out of the room." So I go out the door, and I'm on the other side of the wall, and she goes, "Continue the scene." She goes, "You're just going to leave the door? Just because you get kicked out doesn't mean necessarily the scene ends, you know? Do you have still things you want to communicate?" And it gave him the freedom to stand up for himself because there was that barrier of like the door being locked and shut. And then I start sobbing. Like the anger turned to like this such tears, and like we're both having a real intimate like connection to the material. And that was like one of my most favorite like acting exercises I've ever did because it had such a journey. And
it's amazing. Well, sometimes that is honestly a huge reason why I encourage people to take acting classes. It's not even for the idea of like you have to be a good actor. It's if you can find a great teacher who can shake you out of yourself and give you the freedom to go to places that you either forgot you're allowed to go to or didn't realize you're allowed to go to, or it's so much of it is like, I feel like inherently actors, as much as they are adventurous, are also incredibly trepidatious. Like they're like, don't want to piss anybody off. I want to please the director. I want to please everyone. I want to be really like walking on eggshells. And it's like, that's not where the great performances are. It's like, you have to really explode, and a great teacher will almost freak you out in a way that like doing something like that where it's like they challenge you in the middle and you're like, what? And they're like, you know, like, and they'll be like, I don't believe you, or whatever it is. Or they'll hit you with something, and it's like this thing where you can either crumble under that or you take it and you're like, oh, I can rip this thing open, and the worst case scenario is they still don't like it or whatever it is, but
Yeah.
you find something within yourself, and like I love that, and I found personally that always worked for me. It worked for other people in those classes when like you want to go to a place, and then and maybe you think you're going there, and then someone on the external goes like bullshit, you know?
Yeah,
And then you're
yeah.
like, oh, you know, and then it really is liberating, and it's so important. And yeah, I mean, it's so cliche to talk about like truth in acting and stuff, but it's also fucking true. You know, like the reality, and it goes back to what I said before, like, because like there are plenty of times like I'll do a take, and halfway through the take, I'll be like, sorry, I don't believe
Your
that.
own bullshit
Let me-
detector's going
Yeah,
off, you know?
Yeah. Like I'll say it and be like, oh no. And yeah. Like even if a director's like, oh what? I'm like, nope, sorry, that was total bullshit. You know, like, and it's a thing inherently where like, and look, you can work with people, we all have, where like you may have a read on something and it still may not be what the director or something wants, and you may have to cater that, but like doesn't mean you should be shying away from presenting what you think is the honest moment, you know?
Yeah, it's a nice negotiation too, and it's important for anybody listening here to understand, you know, what Ryan was just saying. You got to
Have an idea. Have a feeling.
Yeah, that too. Have an idea and a feeling, but also really respect your own craft too. You know, you can have a say in the thing that you're contributing to the project. So if you don't feel what you presented was honest or a good representation of what you feel comfortable with, to a degree, you don't want to get obsessive and control every little aspect. You don't want to become the director of your own session.
Well, you also want to trust that if they're like, we've got it, and unless you are miserable with the thing, like, you know, if people are like, oh no, cool, we got, like, they're also looking for a thing. You have to remember it's a collaborative thing. It's like, it's not up to you necessarily, but like your input can be valuable.
Of course.
You know?
And that's when you have a wonderful collaboration with a good director, is one who's open to those understandings, and also when you can trust them enough to be able to point those things out. Try that again. You know, let's you know, all right, now that you've gotten a sense of it.
Dude, some of my favorite directors, there's a few that I've worked with in the last couple of years that I really just adore. And some of my favorite notes from directors are not about the lines, they're about actions. So it'll be like, you know, you'll do a line read and they'll be like, okay, awesome. Now tell me that, but your character is picking up a book off the bookshelf and he's not really paying attention to the person he's saying it to. Or like, oh, he's whatever. There's just something that like, they're not going to be like, this is how I want you to say it, or blah, 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 or like, give it to me angrier, or this or that. They're going like, do it, but you're doing this while you're doing it. Like, and suddenly that brings a whole other interpretation into your brain. And I really think that like letting the intention of the script reveal itself to you is so valuable versus just trying to get through saying the words. We like as an actor, you know, because it's like you can perform the words or you can really say what the words are asking you to say. And a lot of the time trying not to be actory and just going like, what are the words actually asking of me? Like you'll actually get the better performance.
Of course. And I think that's where another good anecdote of this whole thing, especially with the voice acting, is we were removed from a set oftentimes. And when you've had the privilege to work with a good director who puts these amazing set of circumstances, a place in your mind. And says to you that thing, like, imagine you're taking the book off the bookshelf, and that may or may not be written in the stage directions. Oftentimes
there are no stage directions.
There are none.
Yeah.
So to be able as an actor to start thinking like that, like, what are you doing in the scene? What can you be doing in the audition that enforces a read in a different way? It's so drastically different. I mean, I think most people think they stand in front of the microphone, they stand straight, and they read the lines as written. And sometimes that is what you hear. Sometimes people do that. But I think the performances that we all are impressed upon and we remember them are the ones where it's so nuanced. You're you start seeing, like, if you closed your eyes, you can picture the scene. You can picture their actions, their movements. You know,
100%.
Those are the ones. I mean, gosh, I remember hearing, I just think of it, it's the first one that comes to mind. Ray Chase, fantastic actor. A lot of people know.
I mean,
great.
Absolutely.
I remember his performance in Kingdom Hearts 3, and I just was like, whoa, I had that moment of closing my eyes and going, holy shit, that person's doing stuff. They're going
Yeah.
through something. Like, as the actor, I'm like, I'm picturing this person standing in that black box, but I'm like,
Yeah.
there's a fucking scene around them right now, you know?
Yeah.
There's props. I'm seeing every single prop. Like, that's a impressive moment to be able to achieve that type of acting as a voice actor.
And I think that's the aspiration that I think any of us ultimately, like, it's not even about the individual going like, I want to be thought of as like the guy giving that performance. It's more like, I want to cater to telling a story with that level of dedication and depth, so that when people watch the show or play the game or watch the movie or whatever it is, they get lost in it, you know, in the way that we get to when we perform it, because it really is like, you do have to create that space in your mind, because otherwise you're either standing in your own little weird, you know, booth at home, or you're in a studio that, like, you know, there's like really delicious snacks and coffee outside, like everything's really state of the art, and you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna drop a rap album, you know, it's like everything's just so beautiful and like elaborate, and there's such cool gear everywhere, and it's like, you know, it's like, it feels like you're in, you know, the most incredible like Abbey Road kind of scenario sometimes, and like, but then suddenly you're in a war game, or you're, you know, in some crazy fantasy thing, or you're in space, and it's like, okay, how do you build that set in your mind?
I wouldn't be surprised if the answer to this next question is literally every time. I wouldn't be. But do you,
Okay.
but do you remember, like, one of the last times you were working on something where maybe you weren't in like the state of flow, or so to speak, not to phrase it like that, but you were like, this is different, and I feel like I'm so immersed in the experience of it, and I'm so like, whether it's the director, whether it was the character, whether it was the environment. Do you remember like the last time you worked on something where all the right pieces were in place and you felt free, and the product was a result of kind of that freedom?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think funny, talking about the product being the result, I don't know yet about the result, but I know that like currently the thing that I was telling you about, the tandem thing that I'm doing, is just so gratifying, because it is, you know, especially because dubbing, there's so much that you have to think about, you know, like it's a very mental game just to get the technicality down, and it doesn't feel like I'm thinking at all. Like it really is almost like we're not even reading the words. It's so weird. It's just we just go, and like, I'm getting to like emote in real time and feel in real time, and trying not to crack up, because I'm like, this is so good and this other person is so on, and like, it's really, it's amazing. But I've had many experiences, whether you know, a great director has like helped me even come further out of my shell, or elevate a, you know, a way that I look at things, or presents me with a, you know, a mindset of how to, you know, walk into a session beforehand, or how to prepare for something. I think for me, like, all of that kind of joy and all the things you're talking about like really feeling like I'm getting to learn something, grow and enhance, comes from also feeling like, finally starting to feel like I'm allowed to treat myself like an equal to all this stuff. Like, you know, where like, because for a long time I would roll into sessions, I wouldn't ask questions. I would prepare as best as I could and just be a good soldier, and just, I would barely talk in between takes. I was just like, is that good? Cool. Like all very like, and now I'm much more, you know, while also trying to, you know, not over talk in a session, you know, like, or like take, you know, waste people's time. Like, I'm really finally feeling comfortable enough with like, oh, if I want to be a part of telling the best story, I can ask questions. I can involve myself in a collaborative way with these people. These are my peers. These are my coworkers. This isn't like, you know, like, I can finally feel like I'm walking into band practice, you know, and I'm at the point now, which I'm so grateful for, which is like, I can walk into a session with a director I've never worked with, you know, on a project I've never been a part of, with developers or whatever, or something I've never been a part of, new engineer, new studio, and like, within 5 minutes, it's like this. It's like we feel like we've been hanging forever, and there's a shorthand and there's an ease, and a lot of it is because, one, they're all incredible professionals, and I've finally allowed myself to just be a part of the process.
Yeah.
You know?
We put so much pressure on ourselves to think that we are like the weakest link sometimes. But if we just think of ourselves as like, I've been hired because they respect me, they think I'm I'm going to contribute and collaborate on this job. Like, we're all, pieces of the structure that are going to build this house. You can't.
I think about it like, it's like a painting. Like, you need to be a color or a shade of a color, and that's what they're bringing you in for. And it's like, whatever they need of you, they know why they brought you in. They trust you already, and now it's like, mold the thing and play with the thing. And like, we all know that on any given day you're walking into, sometimes you have multiple sessions a day where like you're living in completely different worlds, completely different headspaces. You're meeting maybe all of these characters for the first time. And it's like, going back to perfection and all that stuff, it's like, stop expecting that you need to just show up and be this like surgeon. What you need to do is just show up and be ready to play. And be capable,
Yeah, and then hopefully you've done, and a lot of it is...
If you're there, you've done the work for them to know that you can be efficient.
Yes.
Now, bring the party.
Give yourself the freedom to do that. Yeah, just like trust that you've earned the spot at the table that you're at. You've earned it. Nobody gave you it. I mean, certainly. And
I firmly believe if you're not laughing at some point in a session, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I don't care how serious the thing is.
That's my belief too. I mean, some method actors might beg to differ, but I truly, I don't find the joy.
Well, they can have that. They can have that all they want. If I like, for me, there is an incredible joy in even getting to do something really heavy, and you can go to a really dark place, and when it's done, it's like coming up for air. It's like that. Yeah. No, I love it, and it's also, to me, it's a sense of trust and safety. Like, if I'm on a thing with producers and engineer and a director and all these things, and we're doing stuff, and then in between we can all, giggle about stuff, or someone says something, we all burst out laughing, or a take, or a flub, and we all think it's funny. Like, that's magical, and that it reminds you of like, oh yeah, that's why we're all here in the first place, is to share an experience and tell a story and have fun. And that's going to end up in the end product.
Yes. Yeah. That if having, and we've talked about this on the show before many times, if having fun and enjoying what you're doing isn't the ultimate goal, I would highly consider looking into another profession. If this is a painful experience
100%.
for you every time, then you might want to reconsider the reasons why you are pursuing a career in this
And to
field.
be fair, this is a hard career to pursue. Like, it is a career of a lot of heartbreak and rough waters, but I think that, what you're saying ultimately I really agree with, which is like, the process itself has to be fun for you. Like even just outside of getting, maybe there are people who aren't getting to work as much as they'd like to, or even maybe haven't even worked at all yet, but are fully capable and are hungry and are intrigued by all of this stuff. And it's like, there's so much you can do daily to keep yourself in it, and to keep yourself invested, and to keep yourself learning and growing and enjoying the process, even if you're not directly in a session, doing your ideal thing, which I know is the hardest part for any actor in any medium. Like, we all want to work, we all want to, have a career like that, but so much of it is like, you have to enjoy every part of it, because even when it comes down to the jobs themselves, like, you'll work on things that you'll be absolutely in love with, and then you'll work on things that, like, it could feel more like a job, or you can be like, wait a minute, this is still the best job in the world. Like, it doesn't have to be something cool or something only like I know these people are going to be into. Like, I work on so many projects I know no one's ever going to watch, and I give them just as much love and care and energy and enthusiasm and nuances as anything else, because I just love doing this freaking job. It is just the greatest thing in the world. Every day I wake up and I'm like, this is the best.
Gosh, so well said. Gosh, so well said. It is beautiful, and piggybacking off of that, it's like you can find that same enjoyment even in every one of your auditions. I know we all want to be working on the job and to make the social media announcement that we're this person and that we're a part of this project, but if you've had the opportunity to audition for it, you've had the opportunity to play that character, and it should be just as fun for you, and grow and learn.
To give yourself a challenge. I mean, like, how often do you go back and listen to stuff that you did a year ago or 2 years ago? And like some stuff you may hear and be like, oh, that was actually pretty solid. Like that was a good read. Or like you can hear, so like I know for me sometimes I can go back and I can hear when I really cared about something versus not. Like sometimes for better or for worse. Like I can be like, oh, I really took a lot of time with this and it was to a detriment. Or like, oh, I took a lot of time with this and out of a like a whole month where I know all these other auditions were bad, this one actually sounds pretty good. Why is that? Like, and analyzing all of those things and really trying to like grow, because we all start at different places, right? And like we're never just the fully formed ideal version of ourselves. We never really fully will be. We are always constantly growing and changing and feeling different things and interpreting things differently even for ourselves. And it's you know where I'm going with
100%.
I think, you know.
And I think I have to call, like, I want to comment on a thing you said, which is a lot of people, we don't treat this, a lot of people don't treat acting or performing like a sport, but there's something you can take from certain sports that I think is very valuable. Some people have like a taboo about listening or watching themselves do things, seeing the final product or reviewing old auditions. I call, me personally, I don't know how you feel, but maybe you're on the same page.
I'm with you.
I do that. I go back and review the tapes, and I do it all the time. And I try to, and especially it's interesting. You don't want to get hung up on the wrong things, like if somebody books something and then you go look at your audition and you're like, why didn't I get it? I was better. That had
that stuff. That's not the. Yeah.
That's to a detriment, I believe, and you can't. There might be a billion different reasons that you will never understand that production made a choice that they wanted to make. You might have sounded very similar to another character that they're planning to introduce. You never know.
Many things.
But I constantly do what you do, and I go back to those old auditions, and I'm like, especially when it's like a title of something I've that it's all right, I've auditioned for this before, and then I go, okay, I did it like that before, and now this is I start seeing a trend, and I'm like, okay, a pattern. I keep trying to do this, and I keep trying to work too hard.
Why doesn't I
do that all the time, and I've actually just had it happen recently where I was sitting down with an audition and I went back to previous auditions for this thing that I went out for, and I'm like, I totally understand why those were, for me personally,
right.
why I feel that those were weaker. I was too focused on like the technicality of the
versus
style.
Letting yourself be in the moment. Yeah.
And you know what? I feel right now, like the audition I sent in, I'm like, yeah, I did that. I was free.
The one.
And you know what? If I don't get this and then down the line I audition for it again, I might look back on this one and say, you know what? I said I was and I wasn't. Who knows?
That's how, but that's growth.
Exactly.
Growth,
exactly.
And I mean, there are times I'll go and watch shows, like completed things, and I'll hear a line read and be like, I hear it differently now in my head, or little things like that, and I'm like, is that because I have the space and the full picture now, or does my brain just think differently than it did 6 months ago? And I think there's something really important, especially because with what we do being so, it has to be so fast, especially with dubbing and stuff like that, where it's like you don't have the luxury of doing tons of takes. It's 1, 2, and that's hopefully you've already done it as perfectly as you can and it all makes sense. But there's that quick ability to be able to interpret a line and really understand what you're trying to say in those moments. Like, I'm just trying to, when I go back and watch stuff, kick myself less and less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's the beautiful thing about growth too, is that it's invisible, and the only way you can truly achieve it is if you are giving it your all every time.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen passively. You're going to, by experience, become a better performer, become a better understander of the arts, become a better listener. That was something you were talking about earlier, where you were talking about your dual performance you're working on right now.
Listening is so crucial, man.
And how often do we not have the opportunity to listen and respond?
That's the thing is like, not like, it's not even like we have the luxury of the option, which is what makes it so tough. So when that stuff happens, like if you're lucky enough, I mean, when we did the My Hero movie, I was really, really, really lucky that Justin had recorded like almost every session I had. Justin had recorded like the day before. So
with Neku's
there were a
lines,
couple of so like there were a couple of sessions where like I would record Rody first and he would record after me. But for the most part, like I got to really play off of him, and it made so much of a difference off the bat. And I think Colleen knew that with me being the new guy. Like, I
Yeah.
think she did that intentionally, where she didn't want me to just go in cold and just work off of nothing. Like, she wanted me to like really live in that space.
That's a smart and good
And
director.
oh, I mean, Colleen is one
Yeah.
of the best. She's amazing. She's amazing. Incredibly kind, incredibly focused, and knows exactly what she wants, and knows exactly, like, in the least amount of things, like ways of saying it, knows how to get it if she wants something different. But she's also like just incredibly in tune with like knowing how people fit characters to the point where it, like, she just drops them into place, and they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So she's magic. She's magic. And I mean, Jeremy, who wrote that movie, it's one of the best scripts I've ever gotten to play off of. It is so
Hands down.
effortlessly, yeah, it's such a beautiful script. Every line that I get to deliver in that was like, oh, this is just how a person feels and thinks. And yeah, it was so great. And what's amazing, I don't remember if I told you this, but he reached out to me like after I'd been cast, but before I started recording, and he was like, "Hey, I just want you to know that I went back in and touched up some of Rody's lines to slightly kind of like fix a cadence so that he almost like, because I know how you speak and I know certain words that you use and stuff like that." So he's like, I kind of went back in and punched it up to even more kind of fit your cadence. And I was like, that's so wild. You know, the generosity and understanding, and yeah, that whole thing is such a gift. That experience, that character, all of those people I've been able to share it with, like, talk about, you know, what you asked me before of like going through something that really felt like it changed me and that I can look on the end of and be proud of. I mean, Rody in that movie is one of the proudest things. It's one of the, you know, for me, it's one of the most proud I'll ever be of anything.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's and it's a fantastic. I'm so glad I got to see that with you on the day it came out.
That was really special.
And that was a very special moment for me because as someone who was kind of like stepping into everything that I was doing, to see you, like, I didn't know what I was really walking into. I remember I was like, holy crap, this is like.
Well, I remember not telling anybody, like, you know, because I didn't want to be like, yeah, Rody's kind of like this whole movie, you know, like, I didn't know walking into it either, you know, when we were recording it. So I kind of loved the idea of, you know, just being like, yeah, he's this cool character, and then like slowly letting everybody like, what is happening?
It's such this beautiful, unique experience. It's like a beautiful, unique story and buddy kind of comedy inserted into the world of My Hero Academia. I would probably phrase it that way more so than like, oh yeah, it's a My Hero Academia movie with this new character. It's like, no, this is a movie about this character that just so happens to be in the world of My Hero Academia.
It's really wild. It is so wild. Like, I remember even sitting with you in the movie theater. I was like, I don't know why this movie exists, but I'm so grateful it does.
I know.
Like there's so many reasons why like it doesn't need to exist, and yet it does, and it's like, and it's so special.
Yeah, I'm glad it does, and it's such a nice kind of I wouldn't necessarily say a departure, but as someone who's watched a lot of other movies, and you know, even you having worked on the Attack on Titan movie, most of these things are pretty on brand. It's like kind of a recycling of the same kind of format, like new hero or new villain, same hero is going through a similar thing. This felt like a very fresh and unique take.
It was so special. And I'm trying to remember, were you cast in Belle yet?
I don't think so. I might have been, and that definitely, if that was the timeline of it, I was definitely watching it like, okay, so this is what you got to do. Like, this is how you do it.
Because I just remember, like, if it it was relatively shortly after.
Yeah.
And, like, I just remember, because I remember talking to you about it in the theater, and you were like, this is so crazy, like being in a movie, and I was like, you are destined for just as much, dude. And gosh. It was,
they're surreal experiences, and it's like when you get to watch something in a movie theater, like,
it's wild.
It is, gosh, it is wild. And these beautifully written movies, and to hear it like in that type of sound, like that space, it's something unlike any other. And Belle was a very similar and beautiful experience in itself. It's always fun to be a part of. It's
crazy. I mean, like, I know you just like me. It's like I've wanted to be in movies my entire life, even, you know, when I was in band and stuff. And like I've never seen something I've done in a movie theater, and on that scale, like it's still like that's never gonna leave me.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna leave a lot of people. It's definitely. I would love to see more stuff with Rody. So that's fingers crossed on all that, man. I would love to see more stuff. Well, he's in like one of the games, right? They put him in a couple of the
They
games.
put him
or
in
something?
like it was like in one of the mobile games. He
Yeah.
had some. We got to record some lines. That was like super fun when they were like, yeah, Rhodey's in a game. I was like, what?
I know. And you know what's actually even is really cool is that like I saw that it's just like a. Is it like an official statue that they're making of Rhodey, or is it like what is the brand
Yeah,
of
dude.
this?
They got a set, and they have a Nendoroid that they just announced too. It's
That's big.
crazy.
That like
Dude, it's wild. I mean, the fan base really like accepted Rhodey and adopted Rhodey in a way that I don't know that anybody expected. Like,
yeah.
it's pretty incredible. And the generosity, I mean, that people have sent my way, the warmth and support and kindness just for the character and to me for being a part of it, like it's wild. It is so wild, and I'm so grateful and so kind of just like you feel this sense of pride, but you also feel a sense of like I now feel like a responsibility to like be, a good steward for this and to, to also like I really want people to understand that like other people like you can do this. Like
Yes.
if I can do this, yeah, it doesn't mean it doesn't take hard work and all the elements and stuff, but if I can have this experience and be here telling you this story, like other people can do this. If someone's out there going like, man, I would love to do that one day, like you can.
There's room. And that's actually quickly, I want to like just two things I definitely wanted to touch upon before I let you go here. As somebody who I believe has been one of the most brilliant people in terms of navigating this industry from like interpret this word however you want, but the easiest word for people to understand is networking, right? As somebody who is a communicator, is a connector, is somebody who understands building relationships and all those things. That's one side of this question, okay? And the second is the way you are I mean, we might have to tackle these separately, but these are the questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
The second part of it is someone who keeps the sense of positivity and has such a good attitude and outlook on things, and your mindset to me seems like one of the most healthiest of any of the people working in this industry that can throw all these different bones at you, these constant forms of rejection or fears. How do you, and again, two separate questions, we can tackle them separately, but the one is the way you navigate kind of this business aspect of things that I think a lot of people will learn from is is there a strategy you have in place? How do you tackle that? And then the second part of the question is, and also keeping yourself in such a positive mental state, preaching constantly this positivity, where do you find the energy and dedication to have that type of mindset?
I guess I'll start with the first one first. I mean, I think it comes in stages and it depends on where you are as in your career or where you are in starting to figure yourself out, right? Like, I am a firm believer in like I don't like being a schmoozy guy. I am not the kind of person who like before I was doing this, when I was in the band, like I was terrible at like I wasn't the guy that communicated. I wasn't the email guy. I was just the songwriter. I was like, I'm strictly doing the creative stuff. I don't want to deal with the venues. I don't want to deal with booking people. Like I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. I'm not business. I used to tell myself like I'm not business minded. I'm not. My brain doesn't work that way. Blah, blah. Like I would, all these excuses that I would put it on my other band member who was good at that stuff. Yeah. And that was my other thing. It's like, well, that's your strength. My strength is just being creative. And when I wasn't in the band anymore, and when I didn't have a job, and I was finally at this place where I'm like, I'm going to pursue this full time again. And not only that, but I'm going to like, this is now my job. How do I make this a job where I'm responsible and can create something out of nothing? And so much of it really just started with what I consider better work ethic. I looked at myself in the mirror and was like, what are the balls that you dropped, when you were in the band? And what are the things that, what are the responsibilities you ignored or were too afraid to pick up and really focus on? Because I think we all have that with ourselves individually. And a lot of, I think, being an actor, and especially in voiceover, especially in the beginning, if you don't have an agent or anything like that, it's you have to understand that, like, you have to know how to communicate with people. And it doesn't just mean, hey, this is me. I'm sending all my stuff out to you. This is just me, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm here. You have to understand that there are, other people with time and full email boxes and schedules and life and all these things that, like, whether they're producers or casting directors or agencies or whatever it is that you're trying to reach out to at every stage, like, respect their time and their energy. And if you're writing an email, if you're looking to get signed by an agent and you're reaching out to, if you have 4 or 5 ideal agencies, write 4 or 5 different emails. Don't send them all the same email. Like, personalize things. Take time to actually humanize the moment and the interaction you're trying to have. If you feel like you are not as strong in your craft as you may want to be, don't worry about networking and, or reaching out to people for quote unquote opportunities. Focus more on whether it's taking a class or reaching out to someone who you think can help, you can do sample reads with, who can give you their input, someone you trust. When it comes time to reaching out to people, if you have a reel, if you have all that stuff, like, do the research on if there's a studio. There are the right emails to send them to, and there are the wrong emails to send them to. There are boundaries that you have to respect, and there are things that you have to understand when going about this, and you have to be a professional. I really think it comes down to just that, and having tact and understanding that, like, it's not about you. I never send out an email or anything like that, like, from the place of me. It's about, like, how do we cater a thing, if someone is, reaching out to me about scheduling a thing, or if I'm reaching out to someone else with a question that I might feel like might be impeding, like, how do I ask that in the most respectful way that I'm like, listen, this is so that we can have the smoothest possible outcome, kind of thing. It's really just about understanding other people's energy and time and responsibility and space, and being respectful of all of that, and knowing where you are, trying to really be as objectively honest with yourself about where you are in your ability, in the stage of what your career might be, because, like, you might really want to be here, but maybe you're not ready yet. And, like, you don't want to just throw yourself, and, like, we've all heard those stories of, like, the on-camera stuff where, like, the guy goes to a big agency with his headshot in a pizza box, and it's like, you just don't want to do those kinds of things. You would much rather take more time, build yourself up so that you're the best possible thing you can present, and present yourself as a professional and more as a solution to a problem, and also expect nothing. That's the other thing. It's like, when I sent out the first batch of emails to things I ever sent out, when I had my demo reel and everything, it was like, I sent stuff out and was like, there's a strong chance I will never hear back from these people. So I know that's kind of a weird soup of stuff I just said, but that's kind of my belief, because I don't believe in going like, oh, that's a cool person, if I connect with them, then I'll be associated with XYZ. Like, that, I think, is incredibly unhealthy.
Yep.
To me, it's about, hey, I'm an actor. I'm here to do a job that I love. How do I best be of service to any kind of story that can show up? And I'm going to be collaborating with all kinds of different people. And, it's also the thing of, like, if you're lucky enough to be working and you're going into studios, like, the first person you meet when you walk into that studio at the front desk, you better treat with just as much respect as, like, the person directing you or casting you on that thing. It's there is no lesser person in this process. Like, production coordinators don't get enough love. Like, there are so many people who are, like, the unsung heroes of this entire industry, and I think more people need to just be conscious of that as they go about their own careers, and just being sensitive to that.
So wonderfully said, all that. My gosh, that's a little bit of a masterclass we all just got given us, because I think and it's why it was so important to me to ask you that question, because I think the word networking can sometimes be perceived as a dirty word, because a lot of people, the way that they phrase certain things or the way that they go about pursuing networking is from that position of, that person
schmoozing
has
and, like,
access to this.
right.
If I talk to that person, they're going to be the key to me getting this, rather than establishing authenticity and being somebody who's providing value, or understanding that, like, the person who is the ADR adapter on this script might be a director in a few years. And if you treat that person like trash, you know, then word gets around. I'd had a bad experience working with this person, and, you know, so on and so forth.
And also I think it's a really important distinction to remember, like, you're not here to be everybody's friend. You are here to be respectful and to work with people and collaborate with people. But, like, I have plenty of people that I work with regularly that, like, I'm never going to hang out with. But when we're, like, in sessions, we're, like, we have a great time. We respect each other. It's a total understanding and a give and take and all this stuff. But it's like, you know, you also don't have to do this job thinking that, like, you're supposed to be friends with everyone and therefore that's how you work and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's just, you can literally just be an island.
Yeah.
And as long as you are focusing on your craft and reaching out to the places you need to at the times you need to, you can work plenty. You don't have to be networked into the friend circle of VO to be working a ton, you know. And I think there's a misconception there.
100%.
Because there's, like, just like anything, human beings, like, you're gonna vibe with some people and you aren't with other people. Like, you don't. Nobody owes each other anything other than, like, if you are friend. Like, we just naturally, instinctually just are like brothers. And I have a lot of people that I'm really grateful for in our community that I think we connect with like that. And then there are plenty of people that I'm like, we're associates, you know, like, and I'm totally cool with that, you know.
And there's almost so much time in a day, and not every single, like,
there's only so much energy you have, so much brain power. That's not the job, you know.
Well, I think
That's
a lot
your
of people,
life,
they
you know?
get into, they idolize some people, or they see it as an opportunity, like, I'm going to get in as a part of that friend group, and we're all going to hang out. It's like, well, you got to backpedal a way far back to, you know, analyze that whole thing, what's going on there. Because, again, you don't get into this business to become friends with people. You get in this business to do great work because you respect art and you love telling stories and all that. That's got to come before, like, I'm going to be best friends with Fred Tatasciore. Like, that's like, you can't. That's like a very bizarre way of going about it. But anyway, I want to touch on that second part too. But if let's have one more.
The second part. Yeah, so the second part, I think, again, will kind of be different for everyone at different points in their lives. You know, for me, it's a matter of, you know, I'm 35. I've spent most of my life trying to do what I love, putting money and time and energy and blood and sweat and tears and all things, whether it was the band or performing at different points in my life, while working 2 different jobs at a time. Like, I was, you know, I've been through the ringer of, like, I've probably worked 15 to 20 different jobs since I was a kid, like, from retail to whatever. And I have spent so much time being miserable just trying to make $1 to get, you know, like trying to, like, even just understand, like, what is this rat rate? Like, I've been in so many things for so long that, like, now to finally be at a place where I'm getting to do what I love, getting paid for it, getting to have a career, like, actually getting to live the life I've always dreamt of. It doesn't matter to what scale it is. The fact that I wake up and all I have to do is, do I have a session today? Do I get to read for an audition? Like, I just get to be an actor, and, like, I get to explore and express and hopefully encourage others and just learn and grow and challenge myself and get to, at this point in my life, get to play when I really thought, like, when my band broke up when I was 32, I was like, I failed. I failed my friends. I failed myself. I didn't do the thing that I really promised these people in my life. I promised this, like, we were supposed to do this, and that's my fault. And and I really thought, I was like, man, this cycle, like, I've been on this cycle for so long. I'm already in my 30s. Like, maybe I've had this all wrong. And instead, at that moment, like, I hit like, it was such an insane lightning bolt of, like, I just had to go into the other direction towards this so aggressively, almost insanely so, that I was, like, just convinced it was going to work because I just so deeply believed in it. And it is that funny thing of, like, my backup plan was even crazier than my initial one, you know, and but it's because it all has worked and has continued to bear fruit, and people continue to give me opportunities and trust me with their stories. And every day I wake up to a new adventure, a new surprise, or a new plateau of a challenge I get to try, or I get inspired by you or people that I get to see doing things and amazing work. And I wake up every day truly grateful and happy. And like, I mean, sure, there are days just like anybody else that you're just tired or this or that, or a little out of it, or you get bad news, but I'm living the greatest point of my life right now, and I'm just so lucky to be able to have that, especially at a point in the world when so many people are really struggling and dealing with all kinds of really horrible things personally and otherwise. And I do not I don't make light of that. You know, I really understand that discrepancy and how fortunate I've been.
Yeah.
So every day I just wake up so incredibly grateful. And I know to some people it's probably nauseating, but like, you know, they don't have to show up anymore and hang out, you know, because
Hey,
I'm not going to stop being grateful.
listen, and the two things I boil that down to is perspective and gratitude, like you're saying, and anybody can practice or incorporate those into their life at whatever stage that they are. And not to say that, because there is kind of like this old trope of the tortured artist who, you know, like
Which I so dislike.
I
Yeah.
know, and like it's that you have to kind of look into the darkness.
That you have
in
to
order
be
experience the
pain,
light.
yeah.
I don't like that either. And I think if we can be beacons of positivity and light, that more light makes the whole room brighter, you know? So if
It's funny. No, we'll continue.
no,
Okay,
I'm
go.
just saying if I or you can contribute to that part of the room, then I want to be a part of that room as opposed to the other one where it's like where all the darkness is.
It's funny. I was talking to somebody kind of about this, and they were like, "Isn't it exhausting being positive all the time?" And I was like, "Well, sure, but it's also exhausting being negative, and I would rather that to the alternative. Like they can both drain your energy and you know, like, and pull from you, but like I will never be too exhausted to not put something good out there, you know, and I would much rather exhaust myself in that way than put out just horrific energy or something that's going to, you know, make people's day harder or worse, or just give them that like ugh feeling. Like, no, I want to do whatever I can, however small my you know, raindrop in the pond can be. I want that ripple effect to be as positive as it can be.
And just from the understanding of science and anatomy and physiology, like, okay, being positive, sure, maybe like you said, could be exhausting, but like if you're living in that space of negativity, which I have also lived in and experienced anxiety and depression, like cortisol and things like that are very real. Those things have lasting effects on you and your mentality. So like the people who are shunning or like being like about people who are positive all the time, they're often in that dark space already, and
and that's usually something where I'm like, I feel for them, because I'm like, oh, I know where you're at, like I know and you don't know the rut you're in, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, it's hard. And I think people find, you know, everyone finds themselves at different points in their lives, and I've just been really lucky that I was able to catch myself at a point where I was also at a crux where opportunity was opening up, and I was able to, you know, turn the ship around, so to speak, you know.
Ryan, I'm so happy that I got to sit here and talk with you. I knew it was going to be everything I imagined and more. You are a gift to this community. You're a gift to me and this industry, and I pray to the universe that you never stop putting that beacon of light out there for people, because a lot of people need to find it. And if there's ever more of a success story of somebody who literally, you know, through determination, positivity, and the dedication to this craft, found their way and made a huge splash, unlike kind of any other. I haven't seen somebody like achieve, and that's why I said, you know, how many titles in 2021? Like legit, the impact you've had on so many people is magnificent. So
thank you, brother.
Thank you, dude.
I love you.
I love you too, dude. Thank you for coming on the show, and you'll have to come back one time.
Yeah, please. Anytime. This is pure joy. You're amazing.
Ah, dude. Thank you so much. Everybody, Ryan Colt Levy. Ryan Colt Levy, everyone. I was not exaggerating when I said that this guy is one of the nicest human beings and compassionate friends that I've had the privilege to know in this past year. If you don't know his work, I promise you will be stunned on everything he works at. There's such nuance to all of his characters, and he's got to work on some of the coolest projects: Fire Emblem, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Rody Soul, and My Hero Academia. He even worked on Neo: The World Ends With You, tons of anime, and he was on Record of Ragnarok with me. He played Loki. He really is a Moriarty the Patriot. I mean, I could just go down the list of all the stuff that he's fantastic in. One of the most generous human beings I know, too, will truly give you his time. And I've seen his schedule firsthand in his calendar, and it is booked to the teeth? To the teeth or the T? It's booked to one of those. I'm sure his teeth are pretty booked, and his T's are booked. Really, I'm proud to call him my friend, and I'm so happy he got to come on the show. Gosh, what else? He was one of the first people that reached out to me, like I said. Really gave me a sense of like worth out here in LA. I really felt alone and in this sea of people who were already in the Cool Kids Club, and he made it accessible for me to it just like kind of gave me the freedom to be like, okay, cool. I'm here and I'm amongst people who are doing this and they value me as a peer. So it was so kind of him to do that. And honestly, Ryan, thank you again for all that you do. Everybody says it. We all know that you are. I was just talking with your buddy, and he said that's your reputation in New York as well. So I'm glad to know that, this is your reputation precedes you across the country, across the globe. Everybody, thank you again for listening. Be sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Spotify and give us a thumbs up everywhere. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/Paul Castro Jr. You can just search for my YouTube. That's where all the Points of Experience episodes are. And we're going to be having some cool stuff coming up soon. Incentives for our fans, our listeners, people who have been supporting us, and other ways to support us. So once again, make sure you follow us on all social medias. Make sure you're following us on the podcast platforms because that means a lot. If you can leave us a review, that would really mean a lot to us. But appreciate your support. Thank you for listening. Hope it's been helpful. And I'll see you all on the next one.